Nominees for the 13th South African Film and Television Awards. They've been announced. The awards honouring, of course, creative excellence in the local film and television industry, and a number of drama series are leading the nominations. Let's speak to someone who knows all about the industry, inside and outside. It's a pleasure to have with us Firdous Bulbuli, a filmmaker, independent filmmaker, joining us here on Newsnight. Good to have you with us. I imagine when I look at the sort of numbers we are, over 200 industry experts from various provinces looking at these Saftas. The industry is exploding, regardless of what the critics might say.
It is. It's very exciting. And it's a very rigorous process. You know, people think there's a group of, I don't know, 10 people sitting in a room, when in fact there are 200 people who are watching content from across the country according to genres. So it depends on what it is, whether it's documentary, film, featured, comedies, children's content, etc.
So are these the same 200 people that are watching all of this, or is it broken up?
No, it's broken up. So we have 92 categories. We receive 410 submissions, and the actual juries are broken up. So they're broken up according to genre.
And when we start looking at the juries and what it is that they're hoping to try and find, what is the criteria that they're looking at? Because many young people are going to be watching this, they're going to be watching the Saftas going, I can do that, but I don't know what they're looking for.
So I think we're talking about high production value. So when you're looking at any content, you've got to critique it. And I think the problem, though, is that people don't understand that it is technical. So you're giving points, you're giving marks for different parts of the content, the quality, the storytelling, the narrative, etc. So it doesn't mean that, oh, I like that film, so therefore it's going to win. Okay. It doesn't have to resonate with you. You
may even not like it. It just may have HPV.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is the important thing. So how do you critique it? And part, I think, of the storytelling is really how do we get young judges, jury, to think about it in that perspective, because a lot of the people in South Africa, unfortunately, just come to film by the wayside. They haven't studied film, so they don't understand how to be critical, to look with a critical eye. From which lens are you looking at this content? And this process of having 200 jury members is rigorous in that it brings in experienced and not so experienced people. So you're all together watching, discussing, debating, and at the end you choose. So it's not that anybody forces you, but you would have been through a process of learning and understanding what is value, what is good.
That's for the jury that's watching all of this. How does that translate to the industry as far as those who are making the films, the production, the directors, the producers, the editors? The jury, these 200 people, know what they're looking for, and they're being trained up to know what is good and what is valuable. How does it translate down to the industry, do you think?
So the jury is made up of industry. So these are your industry, these are your colleagues, these are your peers who are looking at and judging. So they come from being directors and producers and storytellers. And that process, as I say, is quite a rigorous one. So you would have worked on production. You would have understood what it means to put together a good story. I think some of the challenges are that you might just have one specific area. So you might just be a director, or you might just be doing hair and makeup. And so the overall story is what we're looking at.
Tell me about the theme, Dare to Dream. I love that because it's so broad, but boy, does it invite a bunch of South African talent, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, part of what I'm saying is we're looking at development, we're looking at growing the industry. We're not really comparing apples with apples because, unfortunately, the Mzansi Magic films are 100,000 rand, and the good quality South African Afrikaans films get about 2 million rand. So you're not really comparing apples with apples.
Also, is the disparity?
Well, I think it's how the funding models worked. And if you remember when Mzansi Magic came along, they were trying to say, let's get people into the industry. So let's give everybody 100,000 rand, and let's see what they can do. What has happened is that we stayed with the whole Tsotsi style, Skopskit and Donor. Here we are in the township. Crime is the story. And that, for me, is a big concern, because I think we need to develop into better storytellers. We need to have quality. And we need to look at who are the people who have been making this for a very long time. Mainly Afrikaans dramas. They've been doing this since, the political change, since apartheid. So you're talking out of that period of people having had the opportunity to tell stories and to learn. And now you've got this new group of young people who have come in with 100,000 and thinking that's a lot of money, I can go out and shoot, and then finding out actually you can't. So the good thing is that those micro-budget films fell out because there weren't many. We also didn't have enough animation, and so we're kind of looking at animation and African animation. I don't know if you know, that's the buzzword right now, is like, get the animation in there. So animation fell out.
But that must be quite expensive. There's a lot of technology involved in that.
Yes, we always say that animation is expensive, but I think there are different ways of doing it, and you've seen that with the new digital way of storytelling. It is possible. So I don't think animation is that expensive anymore. I also think that we need to look at different ways. We don't have to go 3D. There's 2D, there's stop motion, there's other forms of animation, and maybe that's what we should begin to consider, especially as we are a very young industry in that sector. The quality comes in the dramas. We've had some very good feature films. I don't know if you've seen Canary, which is an Afrikaans film.
Yes, I have seen the trailer. I'd love to go and watch it. It looks fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. And then our South African contender for the Oscars, which is Jamil Kubeka's film, Sell the Winter to My Skin.
Okay.
And that has been phenomenal. That's like more than 2 hours long, a feature film. But it really gets you gripped to your seat.
And is that your gold standard? Someone watching this interview this evening, you're saying to them, you're new to the industry, you can't compare apples with apples, but you may get a small bag of apples to play with. What advice are you giving them? Is it Canary? Is that the top of the pops? Or are you telling them to be realistic with what they've got, but aim for something as big as that?
I think we need to be realistic, but I think we also need to resource film. We've just come out of a film summit, 2-day film summit last week, and this was really looking at development in the sector. There are a lot of young black kids who are saying, I want to get into film, and for them, getting into film is in front of the camera. We're talking about behind the camera. How do we train young people? We need writers, good writers. We don't have good writers, good storytellers, good performers. You need to go to acting school, you need to go to drama school, you need to go to learn to read and write film. And we keep saying, just because you have a pen doesn't mean that you can write a novel. So just because you have a camera doesn't mean that you can tell a story.
I was about to say, just because you've got the camera doesn't mean you know what to do with it. I'm going to ask you just very briefly as I wrap this up. You've got a lot of insight, and clearly you're someone who knows the industry very well. I can see youngsters watching the show right now dying to get contact details from you, not cell phone numbers, obviously. Are you on social media, or where can someone find you that may be wanting to ask you more than I could?
Personally, or just the Saftas? Maybe the Saftas. They could just go to the Saftas. Saftas are online. It's part of the National Film and Video Foundation. So they could go onto the Saftas and get the information. Everything is online. Okay. I think that's a huge challenge, though, because not everybody is online. And yes, whilst people have smartphones, the technology is not always available.
All right, I appreciate you coming in to speak to us, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again when the results and the awards are all handed out. I appreciate you coming in
Thank you so much.
to speak to us this evening. Firdaus Bulbuli.